We're going to go ahead and record. So today we're going to learn two different things. We're going to learn how to solve by taking the square root and solve by quadratic formula. Quadratic formula is the harder of the two, but it can be used anytime. So if you forget when we take our quiz how to solve these, then you can use quadratic formula every single time. It works every time. All right. So the difference in this first step that we're doing right here is that they don't have the x term. So normally we have something that looks like this: ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, something like this. But for these, they don't have that middle term. So the way you solve these is you get the x squared by itself. So if you look at the first one, the x squared by itself, and then a square and a square root will cancel each other out. So we take the square root. Okay. You can put that in your calculator to see if it works. So the square root, let me show you where that's at on your calculator. You do the blue key second and this x squared key down here, second and that x squared key. So second and x squared gives you the square root. Sorry, they're getting calculators. But when you hit enter and you get 1/9, make sure that you understand that there's always two answers to a square root. There's always a positive and a negative. So if you look down at your answers, you'll see that they all have that plus minus unless they're two different numbers. So we're looking for the plus minus 9, and it's all the way down here at the bottom. It's all the way over here. Now we're going to put the word 2 in that box. Okay. All right, so now if we look at the next one, I'm going to use a notebook for this so you guys can see it. I have a squared equals 20. A squared is by itself, so we go ahead and take the square root of both sides. But if I try to do this in my calculator, and I take the square root of 20, I get a decimal. There are no decimals on the bottom of the sheet, right? So we've already talked about how to simplify these. What are your factors of 20? What can I multiply together to get 20? 2 and 10. What can I multiply together to get 10? 2 and 5. We've already done this square root stuff. This is nothing new. We circle our pairs, and those come outside. What we don't circle stays inside. Remember that it's always plus or minus. So that's how you get your answer. So for this one on number 2, your answer is plus minus 2 square root 5. If you look at the bottom, that's in the middle column on the top, right here. We're going to put the word was. Make this a little bit bigger so you can see everything. All right. I'm going to go to number 6 and 7. I'm going to go all the way across the top just so you guys can see what you're doing, okay? So on number 6, we have y squared minus 49 equals 0. How can I get y squared by itself? How do I get rid of this 49? Zoomers, you're allowed to answer too. Please don't waste our time just sitting here when you know the answer. Add 49. We get y squared equals 49. What gets rid of the square? What I call it? Do y'all remember what I called it? You just know it's a little checky box. That's what they say. That's what a lot of people say, a little checky box. It's called a square root. So we're going to take the square root. And if you guys go in your calculator and you do the square root of 49, you'll see that you get 7, but what's our actual answer? Not just 7, but also
Plus minus.
plus minus, negative 7. So a positive 7 and a negative 7. That answer is right here. And that word was make. All right. Gonna keep going. We're gonna look at number 7. How do I get that x squared by itself? Add 16, very good. I get x squared equals 8 plus 16 is 24. Do your little checky box or your square root. If you look in your calculator and you try to take the square root of 24, it gives you a decimal, so I know I need to break it down. So what are your factors of 24? 2 and 12. What are your factors of 12? 2 and 6. What are your factors of 6? 2 and 3. You circle your pairs. I have a pair of 2s. Those come out. I don't have any other pairs. So what's left, I just put back together under the box. 2 times 3 is 6. Don't forget there are 2 answers, a positive and a negative. So this one is positive, negative 2 square root 6. Okay, find that at the bottom. It's right here. And we're gonna put our word in there. Okay. Again, we're gonna do the two rows on the top. So I'm gonna go to 11 and 12. Right. So number 11, 4x squared minus 200 equals negative 20. How do I get it x squared by itself? What's the first thing I need to do? Add 200. I get 4x squared equals 180. How do I get x squared by itself? How do I get rid of that 4? Not yet. I got to get rid of the 4 first. What operation am I doing right here? 4 what x squared? Times. So what's the opposite of times? Divide. So I'm going to divide by 4. So that's just another example. Just solve like normal, like if you were solving a regular equation. That will get your x squared by itself. You can use your calculator. 180 divided by 4 is 45. Now that there's no number, it's just x squared. We can do the square root to that little box. So square root it. This is going to be a decimal. So what are your factors of 45? What can I multiply together to get 45? 9 and 5. 9 is 3 and 3 and 5. Do I have a pair? Yes. That goes outside. What we didn't circle stays in. What do I need to remember to put in front of it? Plus minus. So number 11 is plus minus 3 square root 5. You're going to find that at the bottom. Go. Where's that? Hold on. Be patient to this one because the answer key may be wrong. This, I think it might be that one. So just hold on. Hold off on that one. Add 200. 180 divided by 4. Square root should be 3 square root 5. Okay. So that's not, it's not wrong. Okay, it's not wrong. Look at number 12. Okay. How do I solve this one? I got to get that y squared by itself. What's the first thing I need to do? Subtract 18. I get 7y squared equals negative 14. How do I get the y squared by itself? Good. Divide by that 7. We get y squared equals -2. Then what do I do? Okay, watch what happens. Clear this out. I'm going to take the square root of -2. What'd it do? An error. It doesn't work, right? You can't take the square root of a negative number. So for now, for our course, this one is going to be no solution. We don't deal with imaginary numbers, which you'll get into in Math 2 and Math 3. So right now it's going to be no solution, but eventually it will have an answer, okay? But for now it does not. So first one on the bottom is there. All right, let's look at 16. What's different about this one? Yeah, it has some parentheses. Let me get the document cam over there so you can see it. All right. So our goal on the last one is we're going to get that square by itself. On this one, the square is by itself already. There's nothing outside of that set of parentheses. So we're already going to take that square root. So these are the hardest ones on here, okay? They're not bad. They're just harder than the other ones. That just leaves you with x minus 2 equals the square root of 28. And remember, this is a plus minus when I take the square root. What are your factors of 28? Because this is not a good one. What can I multiply together to get 28? And 4 is 2 and 2. So I have a pair of 2s. I left a 7. Remember, it's plus minus. And in the front, I have x minus 2. So ignore this for a minute and tell me how you would get rid of this 2 right here. Add it. Whatever it is, you just put it in the front. It's a positive 2. And then you just write your plus minus 2 square root 7. We're going to do a couple of these, so don't stress out. This is what your quadratic formula will look like in the end if it's not a pretty one. Okay, so you'll see more of this throughout this whole set of notes. All right, so this one was 2 plus or minus 2 square root 7, which is here on the bottom. All right, we're going to do a couple more of these. I know I told you the whole row or whatever, but look at 17. We're probably going to do a couple more than just that one. Okay, so here's 17. 3 x minus 5 squared equals 12. I need that square by itself, but see how it's got the 3 on the outside? Typically, we would multiply that. We don't want to. We want to get rid of it. So we're going to divide it. Get rid of it. So we're left with x minus 5 squared equals 12 divided by 3 is 4. All right, so watch this one carefully. Square root like we did the last one because that squares all by itself. What's your square root of 4? You can do that in your calculator. It's really easy. 2. Remember, it's plus or minus 2, right? So then the next step was that I add that 5 over and I just put it in the very front. So x equals a positive 5 plus or minus 2. But if you guys look down there, there's nothing like this because what they do is they make 2 equations. The first equation they make is 5 plus 2 and then 5 minus 2. What is 5 plus 2? What is 5 minus 2? Those are your 2 answers. So if it doesn't have that square root, you have to split it up and finish it out. So 7 and 3 is teacher. So that's right here. I'm going to do another one like that. I'm going to do number 18 and then I'll move on, okay? So how do I get the square part by itself? Divide by 5. I get n plus 1 squared equals 8. I need to get rid of the square, so I do the square root. I'm left with n plus 1 because these cancel each other out. 8 is 2 times 4. 4 is 2 times 2. We have a pair of 2's, and we left a 2. Don't forget to make it positive negative. Forget about that backside for a minute. How do we get rid of a plus 1? Subtract 1. And that subtract 1 just goes in front. So your answer is n equals, that subtract 1 goes in front of the plus or minus 2 square root of 2. And that's on the very bottom down here. And the word 10. All right, I want to do one more like the one we did a second ago where you had to split them up. So we're going to do number 14. I want you to look at 14. If you can't see it, I'll move it in just a second. All right. We have the square by itself, so we can go ahead and square root. We get a plus 3 equals, what's the square root of 25? What are your two, what do you multiply together to get 25? 5 and 5. So this is a positive negative 5. How do I get rid of this 3? We're going to subtract 3. We get a equals, that negative 3 goes in front of that, subtract 3, plus or minus 5. Since I don't have that square root box, I have to split it up. Negative 3 plus 5 and negative 3 minus 5. Negative 3 plus 5 is 2. Negative 3 minus 5 is negative 8. So 14 is 2 and negative 8. So that's right here told. All right. Everybody okay? So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like 9 more of these. We're going to look at pretty much all of the other ones. Okay, we're going to look together at all the other ones. All right, I'm going to flip this. And we're going to talk about quadratic formula, and I want you to put this formula on your page. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2 times a. And again, I'll explain where everything's coming from. Just write the formula down for just a second. All right. So here's where the A, B, and C come from. Remember I told you we had equations like this. A is the number in front of x squared. B is the number in front of x. And C is that number all by itself when your equation is set equal to 0. Okay, so I'm going to skip around on this page a little bit because your first 6 are not set equal to 0. We'll get there in just a minute. But your other ones are. So like 7 through 10, we're going to work on those first. All right. All right, so number 7. M squared minus 6m minus 1 equals 0. This is what we have. I'm going to list out what A, B, and C is. You do not have to do this every time, okay? You do not have to do this every time. Remember, A is the number with the square term. What's the number in front of m squared, even though there's not one there? 1. What's the number in front of the middle term? What kind of 6? -6. And what's that last number? -1. So we're going to put it into our formula. One more time, that formula is x equals -b plus or minus big fat square root sign b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. If you see Miss Hoover today, get her to sing the song for you. You like Miss Hoover, we learn quadratic formula. She will sing, it's funny, just laugh about it. It is a lot of fun to hear her. Okay. So what this is change the sign of b. So right now b is -6. So what's it going to be in the formula? Positive. So we're going to change the sign. We're going to make it positive. Plus or minus big fat square root sign. It says do b again, but I always do the positive in here so you don't screw it up. So I'm just going to leave it. 6 squared. It doesn't matter if you put the positive or the negative. I always do the positive so I don't mess up. Minus 4. That 4 comes from the formula. What is your a? 1. What's c? All over 2 times, what is a? 1. Listen carefully. This is where you'll mess up if you're not careful. Only do these numbers right here. Don't do that little checky box. Don't do the square root. Put it in your calculator. 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times -1. And what did we get? 40. So I'm going to replace it. 6 plus or minus square root of 40. And what is 2 times 1? 2. From here, it should break down and simplify. You've done all the hard work. What are your factors of 40? 5 and 8. 8 is 2, 2, and 2, right? Remember that from a while back? 3 2s. Do we have a pair? Yeah. So that comes out. So this is what we're looking at now. 6 plus or minus. I'm taking out a 2. And I'm leaving 5 times 2, which is 10 over 2. Everybody see that breakdown? We're going to do this a bunch. So don't, stuff that you've already done. The very last step is your triangle of numbers. That square root does not change. Do not touch it. But 6, 2, and 2 are all divisible by what? 2, right? Yeah. So what's 6 divided by 2? 3. Plus or minus, what's 2 divided by 2? 1. Do not touch the square root. Leave it alone. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Remember, when we're doing this, we don't need either one of those ones. So your final answer is 3 square root 10 plus or minus square root 10. Quadratic formula is very long. It is not hard. Okay, it's very long, but it's not hard. All right, look at number 8. And again, I'm just doing these because they're equal to 0 right now. So number 8. Try to get all that up there so you guys can see it. T squared minus 8t minus 20 equals 0. We want it equal to 0. Again, you don't have to write this out every single time. I'm just doing it for your notes. What's in front of your x squared or your t squared in this case? What's the number in front of t squared? Zoomers, you can answer too.
1.
Thank you. What's your number in front of b or in front of the t? What kind of 8? -8. Perfect. And the last number is -20. Just watch those signs and make sure you put the numbers in there. So x equals, I'm going to go ahead and write the formula again. If you don't want to, you don't have to. I just want it in your notes. The more you write it, the more you're going to remember it. All right. This says change the sign of b. So b right now is -8. So what do we put in the formula? +8. Plus or minus big fat square root. I told you just to keep it positive. So 8 squared. -4. What's your a term? What's your c term? -20. Perfect. All over 2 times your a is 1. Remember, just do this part. So I'll put that in my calculator. 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times -20. What do we get? 144. Two times 1 is 2. We need to break down 144. Guys, I always check to see if it's an actual square root first. This one is, so I don't need to break it down. I just change it to 12. And remember, just like on the other one, I'm going to split it into 2 equations. So I'm going to have 8 plus 12 over 2 and 8 minus 12 over 2. You can put that straight in your calculator if you want to. 8 plus 12 is 20. Divided by 2 is 10. So this gives you 10. The other one, 8 minus 12 divided by 2 gives you -2. So there's your 2 answers for that one. All right, so let's go back to our paper for a minute because I'll have to flip this. Number 7 was 3 plus or minus square root 10. If we look at the bottom, that is u. So everywhere you see a 7, you're going to put a u. And then we did number 8 was 10 and -2. 10 and -2 is e. So everywhere you see an 8, you're going to put an e. All right, so let's do one that's not equal to 0. Let's do one that's not equal to 0. Go back up to the top to number 1. We have x squared plus 6x equals 16. The only way I'm going to get it equal to 0 is to move that last number. And we talked about that yesterday when you guys did your work. So those of you that did your work yesterday did this already. We're going to move that 16 to the other side. We don't ever move our square term unless it's negative, so leave it alone. So we have x squared plus 6x minus 16. What's your first number that you have? What's in front of the x squared? 1. What's the next one? +6. What's the next one? What kind of 16? Negative, right? Okay. So then our formula says x equals, change the sign of b. So instead of +6, what am I going to put right here? -6. Plus or minus, big fat square root sign. Again, I always do the positive. So 6 squared minus 4 times what is a? What is c? -16. All over 2 times a is 1. Do the inside. So in my calculator, and I'll move it up so you can see it in just a minute. 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times -16 gives me 100. Try that and see if it's a perfect square. 2 times 1 is 2. What's the square root of 100? Yeah, so it's pretty, right? It's a good one. So this is -6 plus or minus 10 divided by 2. Remember, when I get that whole number, instead of square roots, I have to split it up. -6 plus 10 divided by 2. And -6 minus 10 divided by 2. -6 plus 10 is 4 over 2, which is 2. -6 minus 10 is -16. divided by 2 is -8. So that is R. So number 1 is R. So everywhere you see a 1, you're going to put an R. Everybody good? Okay, we're going to do another one. I got like 7.5 minutes, so we should be good. We're going to do number 2, a squared plus 10a equals -21. How do I get that 21 on the other side? Add it. Perfect. Good job, guys. So I get a squared plus 10a plus 21 equals 0. What's the number in front of a squared? Sometimes that'll be different. So right now on this sheet, everything is 1. So you should be fine with that. B, what's your middle number? +10. What's your last number? 21. I'm going to rewrite my formula just because I don't have it on this sheet anywhere. X equals -b plus or minus the square root. B squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Our b is +10. When we put it in the formula, we should change it to -10 plus or minus big fat square root. Here, I always use the positive. Okay, that way I don't screw it up. -4 times, what was a? What was c? All over 2 times a is 1. Put this in your calculator. 10 squared minus 4 times 1 times 21 gives us 16 over 2 times 1 is 2. We're going to try the square root of 16. If it works, I don't have to do any hard work. If it doesn't, remember I need to break it down. This one worked. Since I have a whole number, I need to split it up. -10 plus 4 divided by 2 and -10 minus 4 divided by 2. -10 plus 4 is -6 divided by 2 is -3. -10 minus 4 is -14 divided by 2, which is -7. So number 2 is going to be n, because you got -3, -7. So everywhere you see a 2, you should put an n. Any questions? All right, let me see. I got 4 minutes. Let's try 14. I think one of these are going to be really kind of different. Y squared plus 30y minus 75 equals 100. We're going to move the 100 by subtracting it. We get y squared plus 30y minus 175 equals 0. Just to save time, I'm going to kind of go through this myself. A is 1, B is 30, and C, make sure you watch that sign, is -135. Our formula says x equals -b, so change the sign of 30 plus or minus the square root. 30 squared minus 4 times a is 1 times c is -175 all over 2 times 1. So we got bigger numbers, but it's still the same thing. Do this stuff underneath. So 30 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 175 gives us 1600. Negative 30 plus or minus the square root of 1600 over 2. We're going to try the square root of 1600, and it did work, so this is not so bad. And then remember, when I get whole numbers, I'm going to split it up. Negative 30 plus 40 over 2, and negative 30 minus 40 over 2. Negative 30 plus 40 is 10, divided by 2 is 5. Negative 30 minus 40 is negative 70, divided by 2 is negative 35. So even if you have bigger numbers, it's working just fine. So 14 is going to be S. All right. I'm going to stop sharing and stop recording.